Mom.
And did you know their mother, Landon?
Yes.
Had you met her on occasion?
Yes.
And you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Sitting in the second row back here?
Yes.
Was this in the time frame around 2017, 2018 when Albert was stationed in Alaska?
Yes.
And you said that you would go to Alaska on occasion and go back to Myrtle Beach. And you indicated it was you and your mom, right?
Correct.
How often would you guys go to Alaska?
We would stay in Alaska for like a month or so, and then we fly back to Myrtle Beach for a couple weeks and then fly back to Alaska.
Did you fully ever move to Alaska with your mother?
No.
And why is that?
Because we still had our house in Myrtle Beach, so we would go back and forth.
Did your mom ever talk to you about moving to Alaska?
What do you mean?
Well, did she ever tell you whether or not she liked being in Alaska?
Oh, she did not like being in Alaska, no.
And what did she tell you about that?
Because it was cold and she couldn't work there. And there was nothing to do.
At some point, were you up in Alaska with your mom and discussions were talked about moving to Colorado?
Yes.
Tell the jury about that.
I remember after like 3 or 4 years or so, Albert found out that he could move to Colorado and be stationed there. And we all were excited because it was better than being in Alaska.
Do you know whose idea that was?
My mom's.
And why do you say that?
Because there was an incident that happened in Alaska. I wasn't told much, but
something that didn't want her or Albert to be in Alaska anymore?
Mm-hmm.
You have to say yes or no. I'm sorry.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. It's all right. And so talk about the move to Colorado. When this decision was made to go to Colorado, did you still have this house in Myrtle Beach?
We did at first, and then they sold the house. After it was sold, we drove everything to Colorado.
Did you have to fly back to Myrtle Beach and then drive across the country to Colorado?
Yes.
And was it Colorado Springs where you were going to?
Yes.
What was Albert doing as all this was happening? Do you know?
Don't remember.
Was he still in Alaska?
I don't remember. I don't know.
That's fine. Do you remember moving into the house 6627 Mandan Drive here in Colorado Springs?
Yes.
When you moved in, was Albert with you initially?
No.
Well, tell the jury about that. When did Albert come to Colorado Springs to live with you and your mother?
So when we got to Colorado after driving there, the kids came at some point, and then a couple weeks later, Albert came.
And would this have been early 2019
Yes.
timeframe? Now, how long did you live in that house before Gannon's death? Do you remember?
A year. We moved in January of 2019.
Was this year time frame the first time that all of you were together during Albert and your mom's marriage?
Yes.
And first extended time for a year?
Yes.
Had you had an opportunity to see Albert and your mom together on numerous occasions?
Yes.
What was their relationship like? And I'm talking about when you're in Colorado, 2019 on.
It started to feel like we were a family again because everybody was there and like we were together.
Did they ever argue?
Yes.
How often would they argue?
Often.
And how do you know they were arguing?
Because you could hear them arguing.
And what would you do when that would happen?
Anna and Erlena would come ask me why they were arguing. So, like, they would just come in my room and I would turn the TV up or something. Because I didn't want them to have to listen to them argue.
Did you ever get pulled into these arguments?
Yes.
Tell the jury about that.
They would be arguing about something and then it would be like, well, isn't this true? Or like, ask my opinion, try to get my say-so on it.
And who would ask you your opinion to get your say-so?
My mom.
Did you ever ask your mom, say, why do you pull me into these arguments to get my opinion?
Yeah, I just said, like, I don't want to be a part of this.
And what did she say in response to that?
Would just keep asking and then they would keep arguing.
I want to go forward to January of 2020 now, right? Well, let me go back to Christmas of 2019. Did Gannon and Lena, were they with their mom during the holiday period?
Yes, I believe we celebrated Christmas early with them.
Did they go back to South Carolina to be with their mom over the holidays?
Yes.
Did they eventually come back?
Yes.
And would that been now January 2020 when they came back to the house?
Yes.
Now, was your mom working here in Colorado?
Yes.
Where was she working?
At a school.
Do you remember what school?
I don't remember the name of it, no.
French Elementary sound familiar?
Yes.
Was that the school she was working at?
Yes.
In January of 2020, do you know whether or not Albert and your mom were planning to go on a cruise to celebrate their anniversary?
Yes.
Tell the jury about that.
It was a couple-day cruise that they were planning to go on. It was towards the end of the month.
Okay. And did they go on a cruise?
They did, yes.
Where did they go on this cruise? Do you know?
No.
What was going to happen with you and Lena and Gannon while they were gone on the cruise?
She hired a babysitter.
And did you know this babysitter?
No.
Do you know why she hired a babysitter?
No.
And you were how old at the time?
17.
And had you watched the kids before?
Yes.
Had you watched the kids overnight before?
Yes.
How did that... did you ever ask your mom, why are you getting a babysitter? I'm here.
Yeah.
How did she respond to that?
I don't remember. I just remember being like really upset about it.
Do you remember this babysitter's name?
No.
Had you ever seen her before?
No.
Have you ever seen her after?
No.
When they get back from the cruise, how long were they gone? Do you remember?
I think it was the weekend.
So was it a 3-day weekend or a long weekend, or was it just Saturday, Sunday?
I don't remember exactly.
When they come back, how was Albert's and your mom's relationship at that time?
It seemed fine. I think his mom came to visit after that too.
When you say his mom, are you talking about Albert's mom?
Albert's mom, yes.
And how long did she stay?
Only a few days.
On January 25th of 2020, did Albert have to go to another training?
Yes.
Tell the jury about that. Do you know where he was going?
I think it was Oklahoma.
And do you know how long he was to be gone?
No.
Was it longer than a couple days?
Yes.
Was it longer than a week?
I don't know.
Okay, not a problem. So, do you remember when he actually left to go on that training?
You mean like the exact day or?
Yeah, if you do, you know.
No. It was like close to the time that his mom came. It was like a couple days after, I think.
Did he leave with his mom when he went to the training?
I don't remember.
Okay. Why don't we do it this way? Do you remember January 26th of 2020?
Yes.
And was that the day that you were supposed to go on a hike with your mother, Gannon, and Lena?
Yes.
Did Albert leave the day before?
I don't remember.
Okay. I remember, that's fine. Was Albert Stauch there on the day that you were going to go on a hike?
No.
So was he in Oklahoma or on his way to Oklahoma, or do you know?
Yes.
You just don't know when he left.
Right.
Is that fair? All right. So January 26, 2020, that's a Sunday. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Did you recall going to church with your mother and Gannon and Lena?
No, we did not.
And is that something you would remember if you did go to church that day?
Yes.
And on January 26, 2020, were you scheduled to go to work that day?
No, I was not scheduled.
Did you go to work that day?
Yes, I got called in.
And tell the jury about that. Where were you working and why did you get called in?
I was working at Massage Envy. And I think they were like short staffed or somebody called out. That's why I got called in.
And was that unusual?
No.
Would other employees get called in kind of last second if someone calls in sick, that kind of thing?
Yes.
And what Massage Envy were you working at back in January of 2020?
First in Maine.
Where is that within the city? Do you know?
It's near like shopping complexes. I don't remember exactly where it was or road names or anything.
Is it in the northern part of the city?
Yes.
Off of the Powers Drive over there? Okay. How long would it take you to get to work?
25, 30 minutes.
And you were living on kind of the south side of the city?
Right.
All right. So you go to work that day, so obviously you didn't get to go on the hike. Do you know whether or not your mom and Gannon and Lena went on a hike?
They did.
How do you know that?
She told me and I got sent pictures.
And whose idea was it to go on this hike? Do you remember?
No.
But it was a planned event where you were actually going to go on it as well?
Right.
Did your mom tell you anything about what had happened on the hike, in particular with Gannon, while they're out at the hike?
Yes, she said that he had used the bathroom, like in his pants, so they had to leave, go home.
And how were you communicating with her?
Through text.
And do you know where they went to go on a hike?
I think it was Garden of the Gods, but I could be wrong. I don't remember.
Your Honor, may I approach a witness?
You may.
To hand you what's been marked at 2:05. Do you guys, I don't know who's doing. I approach you?
You may. Go ahead.
I'm going to hand you People's Exhibit 205, which is a notebook. Recognize that notebook?
Yes.
Do you have an opportunity to look at that last night?
Yes.
And do you know what that notebook is?
Yes.
And what is it?
It's text messages between my mom and I.
And are those text messages between January 25th, 2020 at 3:42 p.m. all the way January 29th, 2020 to 4:27 p.m.?
Yes.
And does those text messages in that notebook accurately reflect the conversations that you were having with your mom via text messages during that time period?
Yes.
This time we move to admit People's Exhibit 205.
Okay. Exhibit 205 will be admitted. Go ahead.
Now, in People's Exhibit 205, we're going to publish that and go through them, okay, Ms.
Okay.
Hunt? Would that help you kind of establish a timeline as to when conversations are being made?
Yes.
You can go ahead and publish 205, please. And Ms. Hunt, you can either look at the notebook
Okay.
or the TV screen, whatever's easier for you. So on the first page, we see a text on January 25th at 9:09 p.m. Do you see that?
Yes.
And do you know what that's regarding?
Something about our dogs.
Now, for the jury's benefit, there's a blue bubble and a green bubble up on the screen. Who is the blue bubble referenced to?
I am the blue bubble.
So that's coming from your phone?
Yes.
And the green bubble?
From my mom.
And this, what we see on the screen behind us looks like a picture. See that?
Yes.
What is that picture of, you know?
Of one of our dogs.
And do you know why it says maybe Nicole there on the green bubble?
Do not.
You know that's your mom's phone number, right?
Yes.
And so do you remember having this conversation with her back on the 25th?
Yes.
Come, please. The next message says they are saying it may have been his daughters. Do you remember what that was a reference to?
No.
Is this about the same time when Kobe Bryant, the basketball player, died in a helicopter accident?
Yes.
And were you and your mom discussing that prior to you going to work that day?
Yes.
Do you know if that's in reference to perhaps Kobe Bryant's daughters being on the helicopter?
Yes.
And do you remember having that conversation now that I've said those things?
I do.
Okay. If we can scroll down, please. Now, we have a blue bubble that says daughter up at the top. Is that your phone number at the time?
Yes.
So you say, oh no. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you scroll down, please? That was with him? Is that what you say?
Oh no, yes.
Okay. Can we go ahead and scroll down a little further, please? One up to that. Can you go back? I'm sorry. Back right there. All right, so we're now at January 26, 2020 at 5:11 p.m. You're where at this time? Do you remember?
I'm at work.
And do you know where your mom and the kids are?
On a hike.
So you say where you're going, right?
Yes.
Are you there at 5:11 p.m.?
Yes.
And you can look at the TV if it's easier to see it, okay?
Okay.
She says, get good. Can we scroll down? She says food. Remember that?
Yes.
And why are you asking her where? Anywhere close to my work, I want chips.
Because I was hungry.
You wanted your mom to bring you some here in Colorado Springs.
Yes.
When you moved